In today's fast paced corporate world, there is a lot of talk about innovation, performance metrics, and digital transformation. But in that same very process, what often gets left behind are our foundational values, ethics, and cultural depth. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Leadership Lounge with the CEO magazine. I am Shweta, and today I am incredibly honored to be joined by someone who is reshaping the very way we think about leadership. Let's welcome Dr. Chandrashekar Dikshit. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Shweta. I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm also good. So, let me start by going back to where it all began. Tell us a little about your early years. What shaped the way you think today? And were there any experiences or people from your childhood that stayed with you, especially in the way you approach leadership today?
Well, Shweta, I have to go back at least about 20, 30, 35 years ago. Oh, okay. Well, Shweta, growing up, my life, was deeply influenced by a strong sense of discipline, spiritual grounding, and cultural rootedness. I myself wasn't born in a business family or surrounded by a corporate jargon. What I was surrounded by rather was the quiet strength of elders who live with clarity, integrity, and commitment to the community values. That had a great effect on how I see leadership today as a responsibility to guide, uplift, and also serve. Two figures have shaped this philosophy early on in my life. My gurus, Sri Shivrudrava Yogi Maharaj and Sri Shivbal Yogi Maharaj. Their teachings taught me that leadership is first and foremost an inner discipline. You must master your mind, your emotions, and your ego first before you can ever hope to guide others' authenticity. Their presence in my life became a compass, especially in moments where an easier path might have been to follow the crowd rather than carve my own path.
Yeah.
Also, Shweta, growing up in a culturally rich environment, I was exposed to epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata specifically, where I've learned that leadership wasn't about conquest. It was about dharma, about doing what is right, even when it's difficult. This deeply seeded my conviction that ethical leadership is not an optional thing at all. It is a foundational aspect in everybody's life. So, if I look back, I'd say my leadership lens was shaped not in classrooms or the corporate halls, but rather in temples, in silence, and in observing how real leaders lead, which is not by commanding others, but by their own character.
It's incredible how deeply those early experiences imprint themselves into our value system, isn't it?
Yes.
So, now your professional journey is nothing short of remarkable. Certified independent director, thought leader, speaker, author. But was there a turning point that shifted your focus from just doing to influencing, from being in the system to trying to evolve it?
Well, for me, if someone had told me years ago that I'd be known as an author, a speaker, and a voice in the governance and ethics area, I would have just smiled and politely said, let's see. Because for me, this journey didn't begin with any kind of ambition. It rather began with some awareness. My initial career focus was very conventional: strategy, governance, organizational leadership, and so on. But somewhere along the way, I began noticing some disturbing trend, like a growing gap between intellect and integrity, if I may say, in leadership. That's what, nudged me beyond corporate life into some authorship and public speaking. I felt a strong urge to address that vacuum by writing and sharing and also mentoring. In fact, when I wrote the Cultural CEO, I wasn't thinking of any kind of bestseller listings at all for myself. I was rather thinking, can this message, whatever I'm writing, stir a conversation? Can it make or wake up leaders to the idea that culture is foundational? And when it resonated, actually got released, I realized this wasn't just a book, it was the beginning of a movement. So, no, I didn't plan this to shape my life like this, but I followed the questions rather that mattered to me. And the more I explored, the more the path revealed itself, like from corporate life to bookshelves, and from keynote stages to my own YouTube channel, Ethical Eyes on Board. Yes. Like what I've come to learn is you don't chase your purpose, you respond to it. And when you do, your path expands in ways you have never imagined.
Okay, one thing that stands out about your work is the integration of Indian knowledge systems like Upanishads, Arthashastra, and even Vedic ideas into modern corporate strategy. For our viewers, can you explain what that really looks like in action and how do these philosophies guide a CEO or board member today?
Excellent. That's a great question, Shweta. And also, I would say one very close to my heart because it talks about the ancient books or the books that I actually love reading. When I say I connect with Indian knowledge systems with modern leadership, I'm talking about going beyond the Western models of management and drawing from my own civilizational wisdom. Leadership, after all, wasn't born in boardrooms or any of the corporate halls. It evolved through gurukuls, kingdoms, sabhas, and samitis. Like if you note, our ancient texts, whether it is Arthashastra, the Bhagavad Gita, or even the Panchatantra, which you would have read during your younger days, are not just philosophical scriptures. They are strategic leadership manuals. They talk about negotiation, risks, ethical dilemmas, diplomacy, succession planning, and everything which a modern CEO deals with today. So when I write books like The Cultural CEO or Chanakya 2.0 or speak to directors or CXOs, I'm essentially saying, look, our ancestors already solved these problems for us. Only they did it with more soul in it. And I reinterpret those frameworks for today's context, let it be like ESG, crisis management, or stakeholder engagement. For instance, where modern leadership talks about emotional intelligence, our text spoke about samana drishti, which is equanimity, I would say.
Yeah.
Today, we use terms like agility. Ancient wisdoms have emphasized yukti, which is timely and intelligent action. These aren't outdated at all. They just need to be decoded and reapplied. So, bridging Indian knowledge with modern leadership isn't about nostalgia anymore. It's about relevance with reverence. It's like saying, let's not borrow leadership theories from anyone else when we already have inherited some of the best ones. We just need to own them again.
Yes. Like you mentioned, it is already there, but what we did is just forgot to use it. Okay. Your book, The Cultural CEO, takes this idea even further. What led you to write it and who were you thinking of when you wrote it? Was it aimed at seasoned leaders or more for the emerging ones who are still forming the philosophy?
Well, the Cultural CEO was born out of a single realization. We have made culture a poster and not a practice. In most organizations, culture is either a buzzword or a branding line. But in reality, culture is the invisible hand that drives every decision, every interaction, every long-term outcome. The book itself asks a simple yet powerful question. What if the CEO was not just the chief executive officer, but the chief energy officer? The one responsibility for the emotional, ethical, and cultural energy of the company. this shift itself changes everything. In the Cultural CEO, I've explored how leaders can move from being operational managers to cultural architects. I draw from Indian epics like the traditional leadership principles and real world experiences to craft a new leadership model. This is the one where culture is not outsourced to HR only, but something that's embedded into strategy, structure, and succession. I've also, Shweta, discussed how symbolism, rituals, language, and legacy, all of these influence how an organization thinks, acts, and endures. Because at the end of the day, companies don't fail you to poor planning. They fail you to a cultural drift.
Yeah.
So this book is not about adding another layer to the leadership at all. It's about going deeper into what truly sustains it. It's for like anybody, CEOs, directors, founders, and anyone, who believes that culture is something that is core to our life, our leadership, our corporate life, everything.
Something that I found really interesting in your work is your concept of KVP instead of KPI. Okay, so can you walk us through that? What is a KVP and how does it shift the way leaders think?
Yes, this is one of my favorite reframes that I've had during my talks. We're all familiar with KPIs, which is the key performance indicators. They are, very essential for measuring the output, efficiency, growth, and all of that.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. KPIs track performance and not purpose. They measure what's happening on the surface, but they often ignore what's driving it underneath. That's where, KVP comes in. It stands for key value propositions. These are the invisible drivers behind the visible results. KVPs reflect your organization's ethics, your leadership's culture, and your stakeholder trust. They answer questions like, what do we stand for? Are we aligned with our stated values? What legacy are we creating beyond the quarterly profits? Like, for example, a KPI might just tell you revenue grew by 20%, but a KVP would rather ask you, did we grow without compromising ethics, employee well-being, or even environmental responsibility? And in today's world, especially with the rise of ESG and conscious capitalism, leaders are no longer judged by performance alone. They are judged by what their performance protects, promotes, or pollutes. So, shifting from KPI to KVP isn't about discarding data. You don't have to discard KPI, get away from the profit percentage or anything like that. Like, it's rather about adding some depth into it. It's saying, yes, we want to grow, but not at the cost of who we are. And that single shift in mindset changes leadership forever.
Okay. So let's now talk about your YouTube channel, Ethical Eyes on Board. What inspired you to launch it? And how do you see it contributing to the, bigger conversation about ethics and accountability? I mean, you were already doing great. So what was the reason behind starting the channel now?
Well, Ethical Eyes on Board didn't just begin as a content strategy. When I started exploring about corporate governance, ESG and stuff, I noticed there was a major disconnect in the common understanding of these concepts. So I asked myself, what if boardroom wisdom didn't stay behind the closed doors? What if we could democratize it? That question, gave birth to the channel. And on Ethical Eyes on Board, I speak about everything from ESG controversies and greenwashing, independent director roles and boardroom dynamics, leadership philosophy and cultural frameworks, and to ethical dilemmas, legacy planning, and even lessons from Chanakya, Gita, and the Arthashastra. What makes the channel different is that I don't just talk about compliance. I talk about conscience. I humanize leadership, simplify governance, and I also add some soul to the systems. And I Like my videos are under 5 minutes or even some 60-second or 30-second shorts because attention span are short, but the need for clarity and conscience is urgent. The response, you asked me about the response too, has been incredible. So it has grown into a community of learners who want more than just the buzzwords. They want ethical intelligence, not just artificial intelligence. And I have about 5,000 subscribers now, which is still growing.
Yes. It's quite refreshing to see someone using digital platforms for changing the perspective of people. So, another thing that I would like to ask is we often hear about IQ and EQ, but you talk about, cultural intelligence in leadership. So, what does cultural intelligence actually means, and why do you believe it's critical in today's globalized but fragmented business world?
Well, cultural intelligence for me is the ability to understand, respect, and strategically apply the values, beliefs, and the behaviors of people you lead or serve for that matter. Well, it may be across regions, generations, and mindsets. In simpler terms, it's knowing not just how to lead, but how to lead in context. In organizations today, you might have a Gen Z innovator, a legacy business owner, an ESG auditor, and a global investor also. And all of these gentlemen are in the same room.
Yes.
If you walk in with just data and strategy, but no cultural intelligence, you'll miss half the room emotionally and maybe the whole room ethically. So to me, cultural intelligence is what turns authority into authenticity and leadership into legacy. It teaches you when to be assertive and when to be adaptive. It helps you decode silent cues in body language, hierarchy, timing, and the tone of the language, whether you're leading in India, Singapore, or anywhere in the world. In fact, my book, The Cultural CEO, is built on this idea itself, that strategy without cultural intelligence is blind, and culture without leadership is just some kind of movie shown in the theater. So it's time we start treating cultural intelligence not as just any other soft skill, but as what I may call strategic capital.
Okay. So, given the nature of your work, you work very closely with senior leaders, boards, and CXOs. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge modern leaders are facing right now, beyond the, regular technical and operational issues?
Well, the biggest challenge in leadership today is not any kind of lack of intelligence. It's a lack of inner alignment. Leaders know how to manage systems, scale teams, and analyze data, but many are out of sync with their own values, their team's emotional environment, and their organization's deeper purpose. So, it's like we have created a culture where speed is celebrated more than stillness, and visibility, for anybody is more than veracity. Leaders are constantly reacting to markets, media, metrics, without even taking a pause to reflect. Am I responding with integrity? Is this decision aligned with who we claim to be? And another challenge that I see is the erosion of trust, whether it is within teams, across institutions, and even in leadership itself. People no longer follow positions. They follow clarity, courage, and consistency. If a leader lacks ethical clarity or changes colors based on convenience, their influence becomes transactional and never transformative. And finally, many leaders are struggling because they are trying to lead without relearning themselves. In a post-COVID, AI accelerated, ESG sensitive world, the old playbooks rather, don't work. Leaders must now be philosophers, psychologists, and strategists, all in one. That requires a mindset shift, not just any kind of skills upgrade. So, yes, the challenge is real, but so is the opportunity for people. The leaders pause, reflect, and realign today will be the ones who not only shape your tomorrow.
So let's talk about your book, Chanakya 2.0. To be very honest, even the name is intriguing. So what can readers expect, and how does it build on or differ from your earlier work?
Well, thank you. You're also promoting my books. Chanakya 2.0, is not just any kind of book. It's a strategic playbook for modern leadership that is grounded in timeless Indian wisdom. I've taken core principles from the Arthashastra, reinterpreted them through a 21st century lens, and built actionable frameworks that today's board directors, founders, CXOs, and even young professionals can use to lead with clarity, courage, and some conscience in it. See, Chanakya was more than a kingmaker. He was a systems thinker, crisis strategist, and a culture shaper. He believed in leadership that was agile, ethical, and ruthlessly honest. And yet, his relevance today has been reduced to some just motivational quotes on your background, or I wanted to change that, or something like that. So, in Chanakya 2.0, I bridge ancient political strategy with some modern corporate governance. I talk about handling toxic stakeholders, managing perception versus reality, sustaining legacy in a fast world, and building power without ego. I even integrate elements from neuro leadership and emotional intelligence to make the framework, if I may call it, neurologically sound and not just philosophically profound. The book is not for, or I would rather rephrase that, the book is for anyone who wants to lead, and not just at the top level, but from the within, because that's what Chanakya taught us. Before you conquer the world, you must govern yourself.
So it sounds like a masterclass in timeless strategy. And we are down to our last few questions. But before we wrap up, I would like to bring it to a more personal level. So how do you keep yourself grounded and inspired? You are creating, teaching, advising. So what keeps your energy aligned with whatever you are doing?
Well, that's a very personal question. And I'm glad you asked it. For me, focus and inspiration don't come from productivity hacks or caffeine routines. No. They come from alignment. When your purpose, your values, and your daily actions are in sync, focus becomes natural and inspiration becomes inevitable. Spiritually, I stay anchored by the blessings and teachings of my guru. Their presence in my life reminds me that leadership is not about control. It's about surrender to service. This thought keeps my ego in check and my intent very clean. Ritually, I make time for silence, reflection, and nature. As a practicing farmer myself, when I step into my paddy fields, I reconnect with something primal. The soil doesn't hurry. The seed doesn't have a second guess. Nature reminds me that growth takes patience, consistency, and some inner stillness. And furthermore, creatively, I stay inspired by the people I serve. I should never forget them. Every message from a student, every question from a colleague, every email from a reader adds that fuel in me. Because when you realize your work is helping people lead with more clarity and less conflict, you don't need motivation. You feel a quiet sense of mission that is accomplished. It's not mission impossible, it's mission accomplished. So yes, I stay focused, not by avoiding distraction, but by staying devoted to some direction that I have in mind. And that direction for me is very clear: to bring ethics, wisdom, and cultural intelligence back to the heart of leadership.
Okay. So, when you think about success, what does that word mean to you? And has its definition, changed over the years that you have uh, traversed through?
For me, success is not about visibility. It's about some vibration within you. It's not defined by how many people know you by your name, but by how deeply your work touches their lives. Success to me is the quiet sense of knowing that you are walking your path with purpose and without compromise. I've never seen success as any kind of applause for myself. I see it in the inner shift someone experiences after reading one of my books. I feel it when a young professional messages me saying that your video helped me find direction. That's the impact, and that's success for me. And also, success is also being able to sleep peacefully at night, knowing that I didn't sell out my values, that I said what I needed to be said, stood where I needed to stand, and served without ego. It's when your conscience is clear and your contribution is consistent. And Shweta, finally, success for me is legacy without attachment. For me, like planting trees under whose shade I may never sit in the future, writing books whose real impact may be felt like generations later. That's the kind of success I live for. And not for the spotlight, but for the soul that is within me. Has it become too much philosophy?
Not at all, sir. That's actually quite a great reminder that, what success is all about. People have people have a misconception about success, actually. So you have cleared that quite well. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we had wasted quite few minutes, earlier to adjusting the camera setting and all. So the meeting time is actually ending. But I have a couple of questions, so I will reshare another link for you, which you can join just now, so we can finish up the questions. This recording will be saved, and we will continue the question in the next. Okay, sir. Let me end this one. Next question that I would like to ask you, who have been some of the biggest influences on your thinking? I mean, you already mentioned your gurus, but were there other people too?
Well, without any doubt, the deepest influence on my thinking and on my life also comes from my gurus. Their teachings didn't just guide me my spiritual path. They shaped the way I see leadership today, like decision making and even service for me. In times where leadership is often defined by power and projection, my gurus have taught me the value of stillness, inner clarity, and surrender to dharma. It is from them I've learned that the most powerful leaders are not those who speak the loudest, but those who listen the deepest. So, leadership is not just a role, it's a responsibility to serve with wisdom, humility, and some unwavering truth.
Okay. So before we wrap up, I would like to ask that suppose a young professional is listening to us right now, who is maybe just starting their leadership journey. What's one piece of advice you would really want them to know?
Well, if I had to offer just one message, it would be this. Don't race to become someone. First, learn to be aligned with yourself. Right? Because in today's world, it's easy to confuse growth with speed and success with some noise. But leadership that lasts doesn't come from being the loudest in the room. It comes from being the clearest within yourself. So, young professionals today are entering a world of AI, climate change, stakeholder capitalism, and hyperconnectivity. It's tempting to chase relevance, but I urge them to first build some resonance within their values, their vision, and their voice. Develop depth before you pursue some display for yourself. Study not just the skills, but the systems of thought. Like you may go through Gita for governance, or I would say Gita you can read, or any kind of governance manuals also.
Yeah.
Find mentors who challenge your ego, not just endorse your ambition. And remember, clarity is the new charisma. Now, people won't follow your title, they'll follow your truth. And above everything else, lead with dharma, with responsibility, alignment, and service. Because in the end, people may forget your strategies, but they will never forget your standards. They will never forget how you have treated them.
That's actually such a, grounding message, and which is so needed in a world obsessed with speed. Okay. So before we close, there's one question we ask all our guests. So, sir, your journey and your story is being featured in the CEO magazine, which reaches thousands of entrepreneurs and change makers. So what does it mean to you when a platform like this highlights the kind of leadership that you represent?
Well, I have told you earlier also, Shweta. Well, I follow what I preach. When I tell people not to chase visibility, but values, that is what I do. And for CEO Magazine, if my message and my talk or the article that has been featured about me, if it can reach the young professionals and people who would want to grow in their leadership and bring in some change within them and leading with dharma, following their conscience and being ethical in their life, that is what I would love to be. And like that is enough for me. I don't need any kind of reference that they started following because of my talks or my article. But if they can follow, I'm happy. If it has changed the lives of people, I'm happy.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful, grounded, and inspiring conversation. It's been an absolute privilege of mine to hear your story and your vision for the future of leadership. And to our viewers, if today's conversation resonated with you, don't forget to check out Ethical Eyes on Board on YouTube or pick up a copy of the Cultural CEO Chanakya 2.0.
And it's all there on my website, chandrashekardikshit.com. And my last message, Shweta.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I wish you and the CEO Magazine to reach heights that they have never seen by following the ethical means, by following dharma, as I always preach. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All the best to you.
Thank you so much.